Professor Homa, and I'm back with part 2 of the WCCC holiday card. I'll get right to making layer masks on these separate layers, and I did order these layers so that kind of the upper one is on my top layer. The next layer, group of nurses, is here. So sometimes I like to layer my layers in a layer palette, kind of how they are on screen. It just helps me find them a little bit easier, since they may look all the same at times. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to turn off all my other layers and just leave this one visible. And you can see this one goes over the guides a little bit. And instead of cropping, I don't like to just delete pixels because then we lose the chance to kind of move it again. So what I'm going to do is use layer mask. So I'm going to make sure I go in my group shot layer. And remember, this method that you've seen before, we can do paste into to make a layer mask. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a marquee that goes against these guides. And once I have that marquee, I'm going to go up to Layer, Layer Mask, and say Reveal Selection. I want to say Reveal Selection because that means it'll show what's in here and it'll hide everything else. And when I do that, you can see it now, it masks off that layer and it kind of crops it to where the guides are. So if I did have to move it around a little, I don't have a lot of room to move. I would have to go over to the Layer Palette, unlink the layer, and then I could move it around a little bit in this area, but you see if I move it too far, I'm losing. So I don't have a lot of area here, but I'm going to leave it like this. Maybe I'll move it over just a little bit, and I can move it up a little if I had to, but that's, I think I'm okay. You could even nudge it. Alright, so that's the purpose of the layer mask. Once you're done moving them around, you could link the layer mask and keep that little link between them. Alright, so I'm going to now turn that layer off. I'm going to do the next one. You can see there's a lot of area here that has to get cropped off with the layer mask. Now make sure you go on that layer. Make sure you target that layer, the group nurses, and it's just the same process of making a selection with your rectangular marquee and then just going to layer mask and going to reveal selection. So it hides everything else, and you can see it's linked automatically when it starts. So if you have to move it around at all, you would need to unlink it and then make sure that you take your move tool and kind of move this around in the area. And you can see I'm actually moving the mask, what I don't want to do. So make sure you go on the layer and move your layer around. You want to be able to kind of do this and move it around in that area. But I'm cropping it off so I can see this last person here and this person here is kind of off to the right, kind of cropped in. So I'll just relink that again, and I'll go and do these other two by adding a layer mask. So I'm going to pause it there, and then we'll pick up while we're done. Okay, I just finished up the last one, and I'll turn all these layers on, and you can see they're all cropped now nicely with their layer mask. If you look in the layer palette, here's their layer masks, here's the layers. So if I wanted to do anything to the layers, like image adjustments, I would do it. I would have to click on the layer. Anything to the mask, I would click on the mask. And we aren't doing anything with the mask right now. So we are going to do some image adjustments to the layers. Also notice that all the layers are linked together so they can move around. So if I wanted to change the position of these and put them in different corners, I could do that while they're linked. Okay, now what I'm going to do is just take my arrow tool and select this layer up here, and I'm going to look at this photo here and for image adjustments, and I can see there's a lot of highlights. There's white up here, there's white over here. Pretty good range of tones from what I'm looking at. I'll zoom in a little bit. And what I'm going to do is go to image adjustments. I'll check out levels first, and levels is a good place to kind of examine what we have. You can see there's a lot of darks in here. Not a lot of highlights, but I can't really light my highlights because it'll bleach out the areas on the girl's dress and the girl's shirt over here. So I don't want to do that. I could brighten the midtones a little bit, which I think I may do. That'll brighten up skid tones, it'll brighten up the back a little bit, I'll brighten up that just a little bit, and it shouldn't affect our lights. So I'm going to hit OK. Also, you can check shadows, highlights. There are a lot of shadows here, and what it may do is bring up some of the dark areas in the dresses and the curtains. So I'm also going to go image adjustments, shadows, highlights. I don't want to, you can see by default it brightens up everything a whole lot. It takes away all my shadows. I don't want to get rid of all my shadows, but I may just want to tweak them a little. So I'm even going to move my amount down to 0 and just move from the left and just kind of brighten it up to little. Probably 10% is probably all I need for this one. Maybe not even. The brightening of the midtones did help that quite a bit. So I'm just going to do a little bit of that. I'll hit OK. And then the last thing I'm going to do is just run a filter, sharpen, unsharpen mask, and I'm just going to do it. I like to sharpen somewhere around 50 to 100%. And I could zoom in here and look at someone's face, look at these faces. and probably somewhere around 70 or 80 may be fine. I don't want to do a whole lot of sharpening, but I do want to make the features and things on a group shot like this pop a little bit. So somewhere around 70, 80 should probably be fine on this, and I'm going to hit OK. Okay, and I'd probably, after doing this one, I'm going to jump down to the grad one, because that probably doesn't need a lot of work either in terms of editing. So I'm going to go Image, Adjustments, Levels, and I probably see a good range of darks and lights. And I don't think there's anything I really need to do on that one. I'm going to check out Shadows, Highlights. Again, Image, Adjustments, Shadows, Highlights. Since I do have some shadows down here in the underneath the chairs and shadows from trees, I'm going to go in there and check out Shadows, Highlights. And it does kind of, I don't need a whole lot. Maybe I'll go somewhere around 30, 40. But it will bring a little more detail underneath here. I mean, you could use before and after, just clicking on it. We'll bring out the shadows just a little bit. And I'm going to hit OK. And another thing I'm going to do on this one, I'm going to zoom into this one. And I can see that these robes are very bright. And I may even want to, if you're seeing it look a little electric looking in terms of the hue, that they look very saturated, you could go in here to Image Adjustments and go to Hue Saturation and maybe just tone down that color slightly. What it may do sometimes is actually bring just a little more detail into your image. So sometimes I'll just tone that down a little bit. Areas where if down here it's getting real saturated, I'm going to just bring it down a little bit, maybe down around like minus 10 or so. And that sometimes that'll give you a little more detail in some of your highlight areas that may be kind of bleached out with real saturated color. So I'm going to hit OK. I'll zoom out again to see everything, but that image is okay. And I'm also going to sharpen that layer too. And if you go up to Filter on Sharpen Mask, it'll do the same sharpening that you did on the other one, which is probably fine. Just pull out a little more detail on that. Since there's a lot of small detail on that, I am going to sharpen that a little bit. Okay, so I am going to do some image adjustments on these two, and these are going to take a little bit of time, so I want to take my time with that, so I am going to stop this one here. So again, part 2 just kind of dealt with the layer masks that we put on here, and also we started some image adjustments. We started first on the photos that don't need a lot of work. This one needed some mid-tone and maybe a little shadows. This one just needed a little bit of shadows brightening up. So otherwise, this one definitely needs some work. These pictures on this side, they're very dark, they're very yellow, almost orangey in places, so we're going to have to do some work with these. And I'll do that on part 3.